You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting-edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jeanne Amlour, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jeanne Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact. Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of Business Wealth Impact. Today we have another exciting guest, Shane Neman. Now, Shane, there's so much about you that I can't go through everything, but I'm just going to give people a little overview. Shane is a two-time exited founder, mainly in tech. He is a venture capitalist and runs a family office. He is a very experienced real estate developer and investor, and he's also an author of something called Nightlife Lessons, which I'm actually reading right now. And today, Shane is going to talk to us about how to not suck at investing. Welcome, Shane.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and yeah, I'm gonna attempt to talk about that. And I don't know if I definitely know the secret to not sucking at investing, but it's very difficult to accomplish. But I think there are definitely some steps that people can take to get themselves closer.
100%. So now we were chatting about this before, and I'm an investor. And obviously, I don't want to suck at investing. Nobody does, because when you suck at investing, lots of money is lost, right? It's not like sucking at like tennis or, something like that.
It's consequential. Let's put it
Yes,
that
for
way.
sure. And you and I remember we were chatting one day and I said, "Oh my gosh, I lost so much money." And I told you how much. And you said, "Jean, I have lost a lot more than that." And I remembered that because it was kind of funny. Okay. So what's the number one rule to not suck at investing, Shane?
I wouldn't call it a rule, but I call it more of a strategy. So a strategy to help you, you know, be better at investing and not suck at it so much, is learning how to make a good decision. If you think about it, um, no one teaches you that, right? Uh, I wasn't taught in school. My parents didn't sit me down and say, Shane, if you're confronted with a difficult decision, this is how you should approach it,
Mm.
right? For me in particular, uh, n- during COVID, I took a decision-making course
Oh.
actually by a gentleman named Shane Parrish. He runs something called Farnham Street, which is probably the only podcast that I pay
Mm-hmm.
for, honestly. He has a lot of business leaders. He talks about mental models. He talks about decision making and the process of that. And it's really just fascinating stuff. So, um, if you think about it, the best investors, know how to make really, really good decisions, and they know the difference between different types of decisions. There are really consequential, irreversible decisions. There are inconsequential, reversible decisions. So, they know how much time to spend on something, how to figure out whether or not something is even worth making a decision on, right? And when to walk away, or even if they have the capacity to make a decision on something of that sort. Um, so, I think figuring out a formal process that you use to make investment decisions that are, you know, let's say larger investments, if you're just trying to have fun and you're gambling, let's say, for example, some people
Mm-hmm.
are, there are a lot of people who do crypto, or they just kind of have a portion of their portfolio where they're willing to kind of take moonshot bets
Mm-hmm.
on. Those types of decisions are very hard to make because you have limited information to be able to, venture is the hardest one to do because of
Mm-hmm.
that, right? You're basically trying to play a poker game when someone just shows you the first card,
Right. Right.
right? You don't know whether to fold or to double down at that point because you haven't gotten the rest of the
Mm-hmm.
cards, right? And you haven't seen the cards of everyone else. So it's very, very much in the same vein as playing poker, I would
Mm-hmm.
imagine, when you're doing venture
Mm-hmm.
investing. But for most other people, they should have a formal process and stick to that process, and obviously modify it as they are going through it to better that process over time. What's also interesting is that, a lot of people don't like to measure what they're
Mhm.
doing, because frankly, it's a pain in the ass to
Mhm.
do it. And no one wants to like kind of look at how bad they really are,
Mhm.
right? Like it's kind of painful,
Mm.
right? And it's fun to kind of log into your account when you're up, but when you're down, it's
Mhm.
not. And to be reflective and thoughtful about what you're doing is a difficult and time consuming process. So, a lot of the really great investors that I know, they kind of keep what I would call like a decision
Mhm.
journal, right? They then go back periodically and look at the decisions they made and try and learn from both the good and the
Mm.
bad, right? Right? Because you want to learn what you did right in and repeat that, and you also want to learn what you did incorrectly or you should have maybe done differently. And by the way, sometimes you can make arguably the best decision and still lose from
For sure.
randomness, right?
Yeah, nothing's guaranteed at all, ever. Mm.
Absolutely. So you have to also kind of come to that place where no matter how good of a decision or how smart of a investment you make, there are ones that are just way beyond your control and you're going to lose. And you have to play the game knowing that you're going to lose and having the emotional fortitude to deal with that,
Right,
right?
because it is an investment, and by nature, investments have risk. So, when people say a no risk investment, that's not an investment. If it's no risk, that means it's not an investment.
Not even
Mhm.
treasuries are no
Right.
risk, right? Like the US government, God willing, will stay intact for a very long time and throughout our lifetime and stuff. But as a practical matter, it's if you there is risk involved with it, right? So
Now, what you said something very interesting, and that is we do not want to track. We don't people don't want to track. They'd rather just throw mud at walls and it's going to be all right on the night. But we all know in business, people that track everything, there's data then, and you have a big background in computer science. So if somebody knows about data, it's you, right? But I think it's interesting to apply the same thing because we all know we need to track in our businesses to track our decisions. But somehow people don't wanna do that. Even high professionals is, "Are you tracking that?" Well, no. So, that's important just to see where you are.
absolutely, I think that that's what separates you know excellence from mediocrity are people who are willing to do the grunt work of
Mm.
that and willing to kind of face the
The ugly truth.
yeah
The ugly truth, yeah.
and be honest with
Right,
themselves,
because
right?
if you are randomly and, a lot of people invest with emotion. It's just, "I just had a feeling about that," and, sometimes your intuition could be okay, but, I wouldn't bet on everybody's intuition because often we are confusing fear with intuition. So, clearly, if we're confusing fear sometimes, maybe intuition isn't such a reliable source.
Well, I mean, if you look at the best investors, they're it's actually funny because most of them at least are probably slightly on the
Mhm.
spectrum. Like, if you think about it, so they're not, like, experiencing emotion the same way that most people do,
Mm.
right? And so, if you look at, like, a Warren Buffett or someone like that, I mean, they're obviously functional, they're super functional, and they're savants, but they're not, they are buying when everyone else is selling and doing things that are, really, like, difficult for people who you're hardwired with your emotions. It's very difficult to counter
Mm.
those. And like you could even be really good at it and still fall prey to your emotions all the time. It's not something that you kind of like learn and then you're good. It's something you have to practice over and over and over
Mm.
again, right?
Like anything. Okay, so I love that, and I think speaking about the emotional part is kind of the thing. People get carried away. Really, the worst traders are the ones that are emotional. They always say they have to take emotion out of trading, for instance, especially day trading. But so you're saying it serves people to be on the spectrum. because then they're not just going on emotions. Not emotionless, but it's different.
They're not ruled by their emotions. Let's just put it that way.
Two things already. Get a good decision-making process going. And two, don't be led by your emotions. Okay?
Yes. And I think those are part and parcel, because if you have a process, and it kind of eliminates the emotional part of it, right? Because, you follow that process. And if the outcome of that process should be something, you know unemotional. And by the way, there are plenty of books on decision making, plenty of courses out there. And I thought I was pretty good at
Mhm.
it until I actually took one, and I realized how bad I was at it, to be honest with you. You may think you're the best, you're
Right.
not. And there's definitely a lot you can learn.
Okay, well, for people like me that I know I'm not the best investor, that's an easy one because I already know well, I don't actually completely suck. And we're going to get to one of the reasons why I suck less. Okay? When we get to one of your
Yes.
later points. Okay. So then, what's the number 2? You were talking about avoiding mistakes.
This is like kind of like a Charlie Munger philosophy. You don't necessarily have to be the best investor and hit the most home
Mhm.
runs, let's just say. Um, you really just have to do less worse than everyone else.
Right.
Let's just put it that way. Make less mistakes.
Uh-huh.
And again, this goes back to the process, which helps you do that,
Mhm.
right? It helps you make less mistakes by being non-emotional, having a process and that kind of stuff. Um, a lot of people get excited, may see something that they love, and let's just say invest too
Mhm.
much, not understanding fully all the
Mm.
risks. And then, the whole idea here is you want to stay in the game. Like you don't want to do something where if you're wrong, you're out of the game,
Right.
because it's very hard to bring yourself back from a situation like that.
That comes into greed. People think this it's like people that go to the casino and just put everything on a number because they're just so convinced. It's kind of a greed thing of it's the magic bullet in the home run. So we're not going for home runs. We're going for measured success, right?
Again, it'll put you out of the
Mm.
game. You want to live another day to make another bet.
So don't be rash in your decisions and your goal is to stay in the game and make some good decisions hopefully where you make some money, right?
Actually, I saw this statistic that I thought was really interesting. It's like Roger Federer, only 51% of his hits were winners. And 49% were out. And so, like, just think about that. All he needed to do was be 1% better than 50% to, like, be the best in the world. That's all you need in investing too, I think. You just need to be a little bit better than everyone else in terms of your decision
Mhm.
making, in terms of not having FOMO and following the crowd, uh, in terms of right sizing your bets, in terms of knowing when not to go make a bet. That's just as important.
Right. Saying no is important. Just say no sometimes instead of worrying, what if? Well, there'll always be another deal as far as I'm concerned. Right.
Absolutely. If the world has taught me anything, it's
Right.
that there'll always be another opportunity. As long as there's capitalism and there's
Mhm.
around, people will innovate and there will be opportunities to
But
seize.
that's the classic emotion. "Oh, you gotta get into this because this is the best deal ever." And then you're like, "Wow." And that's like a classic case of people that I mean, movies have been written about this, how people just pony up and then they lose, and get the violins out. They lose everything and the family's homeless because of that one decision that somebody talked them into when they could have just said, I don't know, maybe I'll just pass and wait for the next one." Who does that? Not many people.
Well, good
Right,
investors.
I do that. Maybe I'm better than I think. Maybe I don't suck as much as I think I do.
No, no. I mean, most of my time is spent looking at things that I say no to, and trying to cherry pick the ones that I want to say yes to.
It also comes into like I was presented with an investment and I met a great company. Nothing wrong with it. I don't think that they're not going to make money. It didn't suit my investment goals for now. So I think that's really important also to know that I'm not you and you're not me, and your goals are different, and probably how much you're investing is different, right? And the guy couldn't believe it. I said, "Look, I love your company. I think it's amazing. Actually, it's called amazing." And he's like a genius. But the deal that at that point that they could offer me as an investor didn't interest me. I said, I'm not saying it's not great. I'm going to introduce you to people because I love the guy. He's fantastic. He's a friend of a friend. And they were astounded that I said no. They were like, what? She's not going to do it? We thought it was a yes. And I said, no, it's not suiting my investment goals right now. Okay. And one of the guys understood. He went, got it. Yeah.
I think that's part of the decision-making process, is identifying what your goals are. A lot of people don't know how to, they don't even know what, like what their goals
Right.
are. They don't even know what their short-term goals are. They don't know what their long-term goals are. A lot of the best investors that I know, they have hard and fast rules about things that are outside of scope for them, and they just don't touch it. They don't exert the mental energy that they need for that. So if it falls within a certain realm of things that they are not interested in and doesn't serve their objective or their goals or their expertise, let's just say, thank you. I got too many other things to deal with right now. So
Okay, so the next one is have goals, specific goals, right? Okay, that's
yes,
another one. We added
absolutely.
that one. Okay, what's the next one? What's the next point of how to not suck?
Um, okay, let me think.
You were talking about surrounding yourself with other better people than you so you learn from them,
Yeah,
right?
that was the other thing I was gonna say. I wanted to say something smart of that. I think people kind of know that,
Uh,
right? But I
not
don't
really.
know. It's like it's hard to do, just to be honest, because you have to befriend people and you have to lead by adding value initially. Because, how do you surround yourself by, okay, well, like, it doesn't even have to be the best investors. There's any situation, right? Whatever you're into, whether it's investing, music, tennis, whatever it is, right? You have to physically go to those places where those people are and surround yourself with them to start to get acquainted with
Mhm.
them. And I think the mindset, in order to kind of get where you want to go, is thinking more about how you can add value to others versus
Right.
them adding value to you, or what you could get out of
Mm.
them. And and if you can, do that, whether it be by connecting people that you think should be
Mhm.
connected and doing
Mhm.
that, or whether it's with some deep research that you've done and
Mhm.
thoughtfulness, or whatever, you're gonna have to get
Mhm.
creative. It's not easy, and you might have to have a lot of trial and
Mhm.
error. You have to have the courage to go up to people
Mhm.
randomly and be
Mhm.
gregarious, and a lot of people are
Right.
not. The best deals that I get are through the network that I've
Right.
created. And that network was created through adding value.
Now, just so you know, I started doing that and I met people on Zoom. I wasn't even going out. And I started learning and the value.
Well, we met
We
on
met on
Zoom.
Zoom, yes. And then you actually met one of my friends on Zoom who has taught me a lot about investing. And every single one of those investments has been a success. Okay. And we hadn't
Amazing.
even met in person. We did meet this summer in person we got together with the kids. And I realized it was synchronous. And then he knows very much about a certain type of investing, which fulfills my goals right now. And everything we've done has been super successful. And he was telling me that. He goes, "There's certain deals, just they're not for you." And I said, "You're right. I don't even wanna get into that." So, there's that, and then from there, I think energy happens. So now I am involved in, Michael Loeb. He has you're involved in that. Well, now I am gonna go yeah. So that got me involved in that, but I think one of the ways of adding value is very simple. Have money to invest in people's investments. That's how I added value was, "Sure, I have some money. What do you got?"
That's actually the easiest way to do it. It sounds like it's not the easiest, but it
It's
is the
actually the easiest thing.
easiest.
It was like, "Sure, tell me about him. I have this much amount of money, what do you got?" That was the easiest way, and then they wanna educate you because when they're well-meaning, they don't want you to put it in the wrong one, right? And we're also friendly, but the point is from that I think that's the easiest way to add value is they have investments, you have money. If you don't have money to invest, then why are you looking into it in the first place anyway? You know?
Yeah, that's true. There are other people that come on that may want to start a fund and they may not have money and they're really fascinated by this and they want to learn about investing and genuinely have like a curiosity and then if the right backer comes, they could do very well for those people. So me myself, I invest directly into a lot of companies and I do a lot of venture capital, but I back mostly emerging managers that are solo emerging managers that are starting VC funds, especially in like very niche areas that I want exposure to. And I just really don't have the time or capacity, or I don't have the network to get that kind of deal flow. And they're spending all their time and energy and all that kind of stuff. I think the best investors also know how to leverage better investors than them or different investors than them, not just better, just different investors than them, and give them their capital to put to work
Right,
and get exposure to what they're
right,
doing,
right.
right? I know people who just have that strategy. They don't invest any of their own money. They give it to fund managers and they have it across like 100, 50 or whatever, 20 different funds. And, they're like, thank you. Have a nice day. Call me when the check's in the mail.
It's more like a manager. Now you've had some really interesting plays like, is it RoboPill or Pillbot, right?
The company's name and the addicts. But yeah, they make a robotic pill that you swallow, and it does an at home endoscopy when you're on Zoom with your doctor. It's amazing technology. It's gonna hopefully change the way that medicine is
Mhm,
practiced, especially with procedures like endoscopies,
mhm.
which are very expensive. There are many millions of them done every year, and there's no reason why you should have to go in, be put to sleep, to have a tube put down your throat, right? To look at something.
Yeah, and that's amazing. Now, I'm just going to name some of the other ones. You have Figure AI, Impossible Foods, Athletic Greens. I take those. A lot of good companies. Yeah, Convoy, Kraken. Wow, Deep Sentinel, Map Anything. Now, but tell me, there you have a very interesting story, and I started to read your book. I haven't finished it yet, but I think that your beginning was really interesting because what I got out of the book so far is you dared to do things even as a teenager that most people won't do. Okay, like getting into nightclubs when you were too young, and that's fun. And then didn't you have like one of the first AI ticketing? What was your first business?
I think it was, a confluence of events that happened in my life that kind of made me, let's say, adventurous, or not afraid. Let's just say I wasn't afraid of the
Hmm.
unknown. I wasn't afraid of not being able to figure it
Mm,
out. I think fear really paralyzes a lot of people from doing what they want to do or what they think they should do, or what's maybe best for them to do,
hmm.
right? I don't know if that came out of the fact that uh my parents were immigrants, and so they came to this country. They lived a great life before, and they lost everything to come to this country and start over and have a better life and work their way through doing that. They had to have an ingenuity and not just hard work to work their way up. and that requires a certain amount of fearlessness and risk
Mm,
tolerance. I think maybe I learned that from them. It's a different way of looking at the
mhm.
world. I actually ended up doing my first business, uh, dropping out of medical school because my roommate convinced me. He was working at Goldman Sachs at the time. I was going to NYU in Manhattan, and he convinced me that we were going to become gazillionaires during the dot com
Mm.
bubble. Uh, and so, everybody there and their mother at that time were starting dot coms in the late 90s. And, you know, we fell into that trap. And somebody was a sucky investor that gave us millions of
They gave you
dollars.
millions of dollars, so they should be listening to this podcast. They gave kids mi and you blew it? You lost it all?
It wasn't just us. I mean, that was the mania that was going on during that time. And we didn't blow it. I think what we did is we built really awesome software that no one used and was way ahead of its time. Let's just put it that way. So, some people, some companies die because they're too late, and some companies die because they're just way too early.
I have a personal question. What did your mom say when you dropped out of medical school? Was she okay with that?
Yeah, I think my mom was a big catalyst for me not being afraid.
Wow.
Just to be honest with you, you would imagine that most immigrant parents would want their parent. I wanted to be a surgeon.
Mhm. That's like the dream, isn't it? My son, the surgeon, right?
Yeah, but I think my mom was much more forward thinking, and she just trusted me. So, I was like, if this doesn't work, I'll just go back to medical school. And she's like, yeah, I mean, like, what's the worst
Wow.
that could happen,
Mm.
right? And then that didn't happen, obviously, but it didn't work out too bad anyway.
You might not be a gazillionaire, but I think you do okay, right?
No, I'm okay. I'm very blessed. I have to, in many respects, not just monetarily, but that was a key in my life. That was a key. She was a key component of me, not being afraid, just as a practical matter, to try new things.
So there's another point in investing. Don't be afraid. Now, do you know that Steve Jobs used to say that to people? Don't be afraid, you can do it. Do you know about Steve Jobs's distortion reality uh, field?
I knew about his distortion reality field of getting people to do things that they thought was impossible.
These were the words he used to use. Don't be afraid. You can do this. And be like, well, I am afraid. Don't be afraid. You can do this. And I love that I have it on a post-it because it's brilliant. Just don't be afraid. There's not like, don't go to your therapist for months on end. Just don't be afraid you can do this. I love the shortcut. So, but I love that in your book, you talk a lot about your mom. And I love that I do believe she did help your success a lot because Shane, talking to you and knowing you the little that I do, you do have a different mindset than most people. That's for sure. And also, what I noticed about you is you are very much a family man as well. And in your newsletter, it's not just it's business, kids, wife, family trips, a bit more business. And then the best thing in your newsletter is when you say the things that didn't work. Nobody's transparent about that. That these are the companies that I lost with, and these are the good ones. They're all pretending they're winning all the time.
There's one thing I did do opposite of what my mom told me to do. So, my mom was very traditional, and, like most immigrant families, they were like, don't talk about money and don't talk about your personal life and don't tell anyone anything and just kind of keep it all insulated inside you. And then I don't know, maybe it was like 4 or 5 years ago, I kind of like, I don't know what inspired me. I don't remember honestly, but I came to the conclusion that maybe that was another irrational fear,
Mm.
right? Telling people, talking about money, talking about my family, talking about all these other things that a lot of people think is taboo, right? And I said, what if I'm like completely open and transparent to everybody? What would happen? It was very difficult. And in that, by the way I approached it, I think, is I said to myself, what do I want to hear from other investors that I'm not hearing? Right? Because I want to know the person behind that, I want to know who that person really is, not just what they invested in. And I want to know what their values are. I want to know, what they're doing with their
Mhm.
time, what other hobbies they have, what are they reading, what are they thinking about. You know, there's just so many dimensions to more dimensions than just, hey, I invested in this.
I completely agree. You've done a really good job on your personal branding, because this is personal branding. I mean, I saw that. Personally, I agree with you. I wanna know, do they care about their family? And, you know, I wanna see your ski trip photos, and I wanna see that
Yeah.
you're like, I know they're all over Instagram, but that's on Instagram. This is, you, and I know you. Different. Yes. And I also do wanna know about the losses, because that's just like, "There it is, I lost," you know?
Honestly, what that also does is it keeps me accountable, right? It keeps me accountable because I know, even though I only send my newsletter maybe every 6 months to a
Mhm.
year, I don't send it very
Mm.
often. Um, I know I have to send the next one, and I want to do better than I did the last time, right? And so, I'm sticking to my processes, and I'm keeping to my word on some of the predictions that I make or whatever it may be. I think, overall, I want the newsletter to be positive, right? So, I talk about a lot of the positive things, but I think, to make it real, you have to also be true and show people the things that I've lost
Mhm.
on. I talk about the venture stuff that I lost on, the real estate stuff that I lost on, the stocks that
Mhm.
I lost on. And I also tell them about, some of the hard times that I've had, not just great ski trips, but like, 5 years ago, I was like bedridden because I had a crazy back
Oh, wow.
problem, and if you scroll down to the bottom, I tell people about that and I tell them how I overcame that and stuff like that.
It's real life, it's IRL. In real life, it's a good slice. So, and you know what? I was struck because I love seeing that people are good parents. And I remember we were gonna meet in Miami, and I was actually touched when you said this. I said, "Hey, Shane, let's meet." And you said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so bummed I didn't meet you. But, I was reading my kid a story and I fell asleep." And I said, "Well, he benefited from that, and that's fine." You're not afraid to say, "Hey, I fell asleep next to my kid reading him a story, and, next time," because that's important. And, you were very transparent. I thought that was great. I thought, "Fantastic. He's That's okay. We can meet another time." The one that really wanted to benefit, that should have gotten the benefit, your son. So, what do you think? I mean, you're not like most people in that way. There's a lot of people that, they're making a lot of money, but, their wife's really unhappy and they never do anything with the kids. And, they're not really good parents. They're not involved. I mean, you can see you're really involved with your kids. You even said to me, "Oh, but I'm so busy right now because my kids are still young now." I thought, "What are you babysitting?" I mean, he's actually babysitting his own kids. I love it. So, what do you think? Is that your mom's influence and your dad's influence? They were very involved with you. What is that?
I think my parents had it harder than me, a lot harder than me, just to be honest with you. I benefited from their hard
Right.
work in many, many ways. Um, I think for me, after I had a second exit and I worked for like 20 years
Hmm.
straight, pretty much every
Hmm.
day, because if you're a founder, if you're a successful founder, that's pretty much how it works. I came to the conclusion of like, what is it all for? Some people, and I'm not judging, some people get pleasure from material things, and I do too. Like I like nice things. I'm not saying I don't, but like I don't only like nice
Right.
things, right? So, for me, it was like, okay, I had the experience of working hard, being able to make a good amount of money, and then, I wanted the experience of being a
Mm.
parent. That enabled me to actually be able to do that because a lot of people are not as fortunate as I am to be able to be in a position where they could spend a lot of time with their kids. And either I can waste that
Mhm.
chance or I can seize
Mm.
it. And so for me, that became like the cornerstone of what I wanted to do at that second part of my life or the second act of my life, right? For me, in my decision making process, actually, my my kids and time with my kids and my family is a very important part of that decision making process. And so I've forfeited doing a lot of things that could have made me a lot of money probably if I had done them, because I wasn't willing to take, take away that time. And so for me, that was my
Mhm.
priority. And so if you define your goals, right, then you have a trajectory to go towards, right? And so that's a very it's an important part of this entire process.
For me, I was a single mom throughout my whole business. And for me, it was never an option that my kids are neglected or they don't have the lessons or I'm not driving them places. So because that was just the way it was, maybe it took me a little longer, but I have 0 regrets that I was building a business and my kids were neglected and never saw their mom. In fact, they saw me so much they probably were sick of me. Okay? So, and they'll never say, Mom, you didn't spend time with," none of that ever is gonna happen. They went to so many different lessons. I was driving them around. I was homeschooling for part of it as well. Then I thought, "Okay, that won't." I just, I was just a master at, just time blocking and then getting a little bit of help. And this was, you were in New York City. I was a single mom in New York City with no money when I started. It was hard. Okay. However, I agree with you. You set a standard and you just work around it. You don't change your standards to get the goal. So that, because you had high standards because I noticed that about you. Because, a lot of people aren't that aware. And, how much money do you need in the end? You get more money, but you don't see your kids.
You're not gonna take it to the grave. You're not. It's like, and by the way, by 99% of the time, by the second or third generation, all that money that you give your kids is gone. That's like a really big statistic that people know. Like this whole thing of like generational wealth is like a fallacy, because what happens is by the time it's like inherited by your grandkids or whatever, they're like so far removed from you and what understanding what it took for you to build that wealth, then they have no concept of how to protect that thing, protect it, or, that kind of thing.
They're just entitled people that are trust fund babies, and, there's also studies about and again, no judgment, but there have been studies and a lot of data that a lot of those people have no purpose because they didn't have to do anything to get the wealth, and there is kind of a bit of a problem there if you're giving them everything and you're not teaching them work ethic as well. Here's some money as a backup, but you still gotta make your own way as if you didn't have it. They don't teach them that.
I personally don't believe in legacy.
Mm.
I think it's like ego. Like, no, in like 5 generations, nobody's gonna remember me. Not even five, like 3 generations. No, no, like, do you remember your great great
No, I
grandfather?
never met my great-great-grandfather.
You don't even know their name. You don't know who they did. We don't know what they did. You don't know, like,
We do if we search somewhere, but you're right, I never met them.
unless obviously I do something crazy like cure cancer or like, become Einstein or something. Like, no one's gonna remember me, right? And so I'm not gonna be able to influence from the grave, like, in 2 generations or 3 generations, whether those kids are entitled or not. And so, like, I don't believe in that. All I believe is the now, right? And what I can do now to be happy and to make sure my kids are happy, and that, I kind of lay the framework for the immediate generation in front of me. And, I think that's actually a key to like a lot of happiness. People are trying to control things that like they'll never have control over.
I completely agree. I was just talking to a friend yesterday and I said, "I'm getting to the point where in the end, none of this matters. But we're so worried, but in the end," and he said, "I'm getting there too. Like in the end, what matters, right? You have enough. Your kids are loved. They're educated. You try to be as happy as possible. You try to solve the problems that come up because there are problems, and people in the moment, really, right? That's kind of it.
Correct. You just have to, yeah, you have to live. Obviously, you have to plan a little bit, but people who are planning for like 4 generations out are like fooling themselves, right?
I'm definitely not there.
I understand that, but like I know there are people like that, and then I also know that they misinterpret. ego for goal, which is a little bit different as well. So I'm not young, I'm 48. So like, like it's been a journey. I wasn't like this my entire life, right? It's a lot of lessons learned over time,
You're
right?
cracking me up right now because 48 seems very young to me because I'm 60. So, I'm like,
I think I've lived I've lived a full life. So I've experienced a lot of things in my life. And so throughout these 48 years, I mean, I was a totally different person before, right?
complete.
I learned a lot of this the
No,
hard way.
we all did. I learned a
Let's
lot of
just put
what
it that way.
very much the hard way. Okay, so we literally have a couple of minutes left. Shane, what's one thing, one philosophy, mindset, simple thing that you live by that you wanted to share with people to help them out?
My favorite book actually is The Four Agreements. I don't know if you ever read that book.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite books.
It's really, like, had the most impact on
Mhm.
me. There were 2 books that had the most impact for me. One is, that, and then there's another, book called 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Berkman. I don't know if a lot of people know, but 4,000 weeks is your average lifespan.
Actually, on my reading list, I heard about that the other day.
It's one of the best books I've read. I actually reread that book. I listen to it, like, several times a year. The Four Agreements is so
Yes.
simple, and it's, like, applicable to so many things, not just living a better life, but like even if you follow the four agreements in business, you should do well. But the first one is be impeccable with your word. If you can control the way you talk to other people and you talk to yourself inside your mind, being impeccable with your word is not just how you speak to other people, but how you speak to yourself and about yourself. Is a very, very powerful thing because, your speech really dictates your thoughts and your energy and like what comes around you.
Okay, I love that you just quoted The Four Agreements because it's one of my favorite books. And I'm actually a bit surprised because it's such a simplistic book for somebody so intellectual as yourself. I'm a little shocked that that's your favorite book, but I get it. And even if we did one of those, if we did all four of those, our lives would be completely changed. So, Shane, I thank you for this interview. It's been very interesting. And listeners, yeah, and thanks for listening. And if you loved it, subscribe and write a review, and we'll see you on the next great show. Take care.
Thank you.
You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting-edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jeanne Amlour, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jeanne Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact.